This is our tent on the island of Biak. It's just off the northwestern tip of New Guinea. We flew up to Biak shortly after the invasion of the island. In fact, about 2 or 3 weeks after the initial invasion. The 345th Bomb Group actually helped establish our presence on the island. And when we landed there at Mokmer Strip, there was still a lot of the dead Japanese soldiers lying around. It was all a jungle area. And we had moved up to Biak by our airplanes. We stuffed airplanes, our B-25s, our tents, and all our equipment, and flew up there. And when we landed, we asked where our area was, and they said it's right over there. And it was all jungle. We said, how are we going to put our tents up there? We had a backpack for our parachute that had emergency equipment in it, and one of the items was a machete. And they said, well, you take out your machete from your emergency kit and you start chopping down and clearing an area where you want your tent to go. So we got the machete out and we cleared out an area and put up our temporary tent. All around us, there were numerous dead Japanese bodies around. In fact, going from our tent area to our mess tent, we had to traverse between numerous Japanese bodies that had been deteriorating over a period of several days, which didn't make it too enhancing for eating. We put our tent up finally, and as you can see from the photograph that they're on 50-gallon drums. We was able to scrounge some wood for the flooring and the framework and some netting which we put around, and we had quite an elaborate tent. We even had a large P-38 gasoline tank that we put up on stilts and was able to get water from the rain that would run off our tents, which kept the tank filled. And we had an inside shower, which was kind of a luxury. Most of the fellas didn't have a shower. They had a community shower. If you notice on the right side there are these bags there. That's our foxhole. This tent is built on solid coral, so we had to dig down through the coral for our foxholes. This was to protect us when the Japanese would come over and bomb the island. And you can see our 10 helmets on the top of a 50-gallon drum just to the right of me. So when they'd sound the red alert, we'd go rambling down and run over and jump in our foxhole. But they'd come over several times during the night, and we would get tired of jumping out of bed, running in and getting in our foxholes. So we just stayed on our cots and listened to the bombs explode. It took a month or so before the dead Japanese bodies were removed. In back of the tent, you see this bushy hillside. That hillside had many, many natural caves there that the Japanese used during the period when the Marines were invading the island. In fact, the Japanese were driven over that ridge over to the other side, and they were left there. They didn't bother to go after them. As a result, they would infiltrate the area at night sometimes and steal food and clothing and whatever they could find. Lieutenant Hall and I, who's a fellow kneeling down, decided we'd go up the trail and go through the caves up there. So we went up to the caves, we took our flashlights and strapped on our 45s. At the entrance to the cave, there was a dead Japanese officer tied to a post. He was there to draw fire, so his body was pretty well shot up. We went inside the caves and wandered around, and the stench was really overpowering. I stepped on something and I looked down, and I was standing on a dead Japanese body. My foot was on his throat, which made me pretty queasy. After a while, we got so nauseated from the smell that we left and went back to our tent area. I just kept on walking, and I walked out into the lagoon, which was right near our tent. to wash off all the smell. And while I was in the lagoon, two Japanese dead bodies floated by, and so I hurriedly got out of the lagoon and went back to my tent. Lieutenant Peck, he was a navigator. Lieutenant Hall was a pilot. And I met Lieutenant Peck back at Polytechnic High School in Los Angeles when we were taking a special course which would enable us to pass the written test to become a aviation cadet. We both passed the test and become aviation cadets at the Santa Ana Army Air Base. Then we went to Hemet, California for our primary flying, and he washed out and went back and went to navigator school. I didn't see him again until we were at Columbia, South Carolina, where we joined up with our crews and trained as a crew and went overseas. Lieutenant Peck ended up going overseas, not at the same time I did, but a month or two later. So happened we ended up in the same tent. In January of 1945, his airplane was shot down over Luzon near Manila, and they crash landed right near a Japanese headquarters. The Japanese come out, all the crew survived the crash, and the Japanese come out and executed all the crew on the spot. We got this information from the guerrillas at a later date. Lieutenant Hall, he survived the war. Of course, I did too. So looking back at this photograph of our tent on the island of Biak brought back many, many memories of what we went through during that period in our life.